It was a crisp autumn night on October 15, 2012, when Michael Harris checked into a small, unassuming hotel on the outskirts of New Orleans. He was on a business trip, traveling alone, and had booked the room at the last minute. The hotel, though old, had decent reviews. It wasn't anything luxurious, but Michael didn't mind. He was there for one night and just needed a place to sleep. The hotel was located in an area just far enough from the bustling French Quarter to avoid the heavy crowds, but still within walking distance to the sights. The building itself was 3 stories tall, with red brick walls and vintage wrought iron balconies. It had the kind of charm that made it feel like it had 1,000 untold stories hidden within its walls. When Michael walked in, the lobby had an eerie, almost forgotten feel. The lights were dim, and the old wooden counter creaked under the weight of the night. Behind the counter, an elderly man greeted Michael with a thin smile, handing him a room key without a word. "Room 305, the man said, almost mechanically. Michael nodded, thanked the man, and headed for the elevator. The elevator was a small, ancient thing, and when he stepped inside, it creaked and groaned as it ascended to the 3rd floor. When the doors opened, Michael was greeted by a long, dimly lit hallway with faded wallpaper and a musty scent hanging in the air. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever. There were no windows, and the only sound was the faint hum of fluorescent lights above. As Michael walked toward his room, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The atmosphere was heavy, almost as if the building had been abandoned and was only now waking up to his presence. When he reached room 305, he inserted the key into the lock, and the door opened with a soft squeak. Inside, the room was small but functional. A bed covered with a worn quilt, a desk with an old lamp, and a faded painting on the wall. It wasn't the most comfortable-looking place, but it would do for one night. Michael tossed his suitcase onto the bed and decided to take a quick shower. As he undressed, he noticed something odd: there was no mirror in the bathroom. It struck him as strange for a hotel, but he didn't think much of it. He stepped into the shower and let the hot water wash away the weariness of the day. But when he stepped out, something felt off. The room felt colder, and there was an odd, unsettling silence. He shrugged it off, blaming it on the air conditioning. He pulled on his clothes and sat down on the bed to check his emails on his phone. That's when he realized something that sent a chill down his spine. The hotel's Wi-Fi wasn't working. He called the front desk to inquire about it, but when the phone rang, it didn't go through. He tried again and again, but the same silence answered him. A sense of dread started to creep in, and Michael's curiosity got the best of him. He decided to investigate further. When he opened the door to his room, he was startled to find the hallway completely empty. It wasn't just empty, it was wrong. The long corridor that had stretched on endlessly when he first walked down it now seemed shorter, as though the space itself had shrunk. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights was gone, replaced by a deep silence. Feeling uneasy, Michael stepped into the hallway, trying to shake off the growing anxiety. He was about to head down to the front desk to ask what was going on when something caught his eye. At the far end of the hallway, he saw another door, one he was certain hadn't been there before. It was a door he didn't recognize, leading into a room he'd never seen. Against his better judgment, Michael walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The closer he got, the more uneasy he became. But his curiosity pushed him forward. When he reached the door, he hesitated for a moment before turning the handle. It was unlocked. He stepped inside, and the room looked familiar. Too familiar. It was the exact same as his own, same bed, same furniture, same faded painting on the wall. But something was off. The air felt thicker, colder. There was no sign of life. No lights, no sounds. Just the oppressive stillness. Michael stepped back, confused. How could this be? His own room was directly down the hall. He turned around to leave, but as he opened the door, he was met with an unexpected sight. The hallway had changed. The corridor no longer stretched on to the end he had walked down earlier. Instead, the hallway had looped back on itself, and now, it seemed to go in a different direction. The walls looked the same, but the layout was off. It didn't make sense. Heart pounding, Michael quickly retreated back into the room and slammed the door shut. He paced the room, his mind racing. What was going on? Where was he? How was this possible? The longer he stood there, the more disoriented he became. The silence of the hotel pressed in on him. He felt like he was trapped in a never-ending loop of disillusion. The walls seemed to close in, and with every second that passed, the room felt more and more unfamiliar. Finally, Michael decided he had to leave. He grabbed his suitcase and opened the door to make his escape. But as he stepped into the hallway, he was hit with a cold, suffocating dread. The hallway was different now, no longer the familiar stretch of faded wallpaper and flickering lights. It was dark, almost pitch black, and there were no doors, no windows. Only a single, dimly lit doorway at the end of the hall. Without thinking, Michael ran toward it, his footsteps echoing in the silence. But as he reached the door and grabbed the handle, it wouldn't budge. He pulled harder, desperate to escape, but the door was sealed shut. The panic began to set in, and Michael screamed for help. He banged on the door with his fists, but there was no response. No sound, no movement. Just the oppressive silence, as if the hotel itself had swallowed him whole. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something that made his blood run cold. At the far end of the hallway, a figure appeared, standing motionless in the shadows. A woman. Her face was obscured by her hair, and she wore a faded, tattered dress. She didn't move, but Michael could feel her eyes on him, even though he couldn't see her face. A chill ran down his spine, and he backed away, his breath coming in shallow gasps. But no matter how far he moved, the woman remained standing at the end of the hall, her gaze never leaving him. In that moment, the hallway seemed to stretch on forever, and Michael realized with a sickening jolt that he might never leave this hotel. The walls, the hallways, the rooms, they were all part of the same nightmare, and the woman at the end of the hall was the key to it all. But as the darkness closed in around him, Michael's last thought was a question that haunted him long after the door to the hallway had vanished: was I ever really in room 305? Michael Harris's experience in 2012 has since become an urban legend in New Orleans. Many who have stayed at that same hotel report similar encounters with disappearing rooms, shifting hallways, and a mysterious woman who seems to lurk in the shadows. Despite multiple attempts to investigate the hotel's strange occurrences, no one has ever been able to find a logical explanation.